проведения специальной военной операции.
Just hours ago, Russian forces began their attack.
Kyiv might soon fall to Russian forces.
The Russians will take control of Kiev.
Within 24 hours.
The Russian force is so much larger than the Ukrainian one.
It's not a question of if Russia takes the capital, it's a question of when.
This is day 6.
On the 10th day.
Day 22.
Day 33.
78.
The Land of Shadow pushes us past another momentous milestone. 8,000 officers, KRU, killed in Ukraine. We're going to be looking at a few of the faces of the day walkers that won't be day walking anymore. To begin with, however, I thought we could start by taking a look at the generals that have been confirmed to have been killed since the full-scale war began. That number may surprise some of you because it sits at 19. War reveals the truth about armies. Not in their parades, not in their speeches, but in the moments when everything breaks. On the 4th day of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, something broke. A convoy stored outside Hostomel. Engines idling, radios failing. Soldiers waiting for orders that never came. And then a general stepped out of his vehicle. Major General Andrei Alexandrovich Sukhovetsky was not an incompetent man. He was the opposite. A decorated airborne commander with combat experience stretching from Chechnya to Syria. He represented the best of what the Russian military believed itself to be. But on February the 28th, 2022, he died on the side of a Ukrainian road, killed by a sniper while inspecting a traffic jam. A general solving a logistical problem that should have been handled by a sergeant. This was not an accident, it was a warning.
Putin's forces have suffered some bitter blows in the last 3 weeks of war. So far, 4 top Russian commanders have been killed in Ukraine. Here's a report.
Another top Russian commander, Major General Oleg Mityaev, has been killed. He died during a fierce battle with Ukrainian troops in Mariupol. He was the commander of 150th Motorized Rifle Division. This is not the first blow for the Russians in this war. Earlier, a key commander of the Russian tank regiment, Colonel Andrei Zakharov, was eliminated in Kiev after a heavy fight. Zakharov was a recipient of the Order of Courage from Putin himself in 2016. In a fatal blow to Russia's crack special forces, Major General Vitaly Gerasimov, the Chief of Staff of the 41st Army, was killed in Kharkiv. Russia also lost the head of the 7th Airborne Division Major General Andrei Sukhovetsky. A war hero, the general's loss is being seen as a bitter blow to Putin's crack units. A sign Russia's assault isn't going to plan.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
The 4th anniversary of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2026 serves as a somber milestone for the Russian armed forces, highlighting a catastrophic erosion of the military's professional leadership layer. By March 2026, the verified toll of Russian military officers surpassed 8,000, a figure meticulously cross-referenced through a combination of open-source intelligence, social media, obituaries, and a significant leak of Russian state registry data. Within this broader aggregate of fatalities, the death of 8,000 officers stands as the most critical indicator of Russian military decline. This attrition of the officer corps, ranging from junior lieutenants to senior general officers, has fundamentally altered the Russian military's command, control, and communication architecture, forcing a transition from the sophisticated maneuver warfare envisioned in pre-2022 doctrine to a degraded model characterized by rigid, software-reliant positional attrition. The attrition of Russian general officers is perhaps the most visible indicator of the breakdown in Russian military effectiveness. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, at least 19 Russian generals have been confirmed killed, a number that far exceeds losses in the Second Chechen War. These fatalities are distributed across 3 distinct functional categories: frontline command exposure, precision strikes on rear headquarters, and domestic assassinations or accidents. In the opening months of the war, Russian generals were forced to move to the very edge of the front lines to address critical failures in command and control, flagging morale, and the collapse of the era secure telephone system. This proximity to active combat zones led to a high rate of decapitation by Ukrainian snipers and tactical artillery. As the Ukrainian military integrated Western long-range precision weapons like HIMARS and Storm Shadow missiles, the safe depth for Russian headquarters significantly receded. In June 2023, Major General Sergei Gorachev, Chief of Staff of the 35th Combined Arms Army, was killed in a missile strike in the Zaporizhia region. 1 month later, General Oleg Sokov, Deputy Commander of the Southern Military District, was killed by a missile strike to the 58th Combined Arms Army in Berdyansk. These strikes demonstrated that even deep operational level commanders were no longer immune to Ukrainian intelligence and precision fires.
On 14 July 2022, 3 Caliber cruise missiles were launched from the Black Sea Fleet Kilo-class submarine Rostov-na-Don. They struck the center of the Ukrainian town of Vinnytsia. It was not a military target. The attack killed 29 civilians, including 3 children, and wounded over 200. Russian Captain Second Rank Stanislav Rizhitsky was in command of Rostov-na-Don. He conducted the missile strike. Russia was so pleased with his work that following the attack, he was promoted to deputy commander of the 4th Independent Submarine Brigade. Ukraine took careful note of his promotion. On 10 July 2023, in Krasnodar, Russia, Stanislav Rizhitsky was out on his morning jog. The weather was foggy and raining. Rizhitsky would not finish his run. Ukrainian HUR operatives had tracked his daily route by hacking into data from his running app. Rizhitsky had no idea that Ukrainian intelligence officers had activated a local asset and equipped him with a Marakov pistol equipped with a suppressor. They gave the operative precise coordinates for the ambush on a path near the Olymp Sports Complex. A rainy day was specifically chosen for the operation. It assured there would be no witnesses. As Rizhitsky rounded a bend on the jogging path, the assassin fired 7 rounds at close range. Rizhitsky was found hours later. By then, the Ukrainian team had been exfiltrated, vanished into the rain and fog. But Ukraine's vengeance was not complete. The Russian submarine Rostov-na-Don proved as unlucky as her former skipper. 13 September 2023, Ukrainian Storm Shadow cruise missiles struck the submarine twice while it was pierside at the naval base in occupied Sevastopol. Unable to get underway on its own power, the pockmarked sub was towed to a dry dock for repairs. But Ukraine was not finished. Rostov-na-Don's end came in a second attack on 2 August 2024. This time, ATACMS surface-to-surface missiles would finish the job. Satellite imagery and independent analysis confirmed the sub's catastrophic destruction. Pictures show the starboard side aft of the sail was pierced by a hole large enough to drive a car through. Rostov-na-Don had attacked her last city and would never put to sea again. This marked the first submarine kill by Ukraine in this war, significantly weakening Russia's Black Sea Fleet missile launch capability. Beginning in 2022, the Russian Air Force began a systemic missile campaign against Ukrainian cities. Its goal was to spread terror. Tu-95 strategic bombers from Engels and Ukraina air bases launched hundreds of KH-101 and KH-555 cruise missiles at civilian apartment blocks, hospitals, and elementary schools. Power grids, water and heating infrastructure were also targeted, causing widespread blackouts and hundreds of civilian deaths during winter. Major Oleg Stegachev was a Tu-95 pilot from Engels 2 Air Base. He'd conducted numerous missile strikes that targeted Ukrainian civilians. HUR agents hacked into Russian Air Force databases and exploited the personal details of 75 Engels 2 personnel, including Stegachev. The HUR coordinated local surveillance to monitor his routine and his daily commute. On the evening of 7 February 2024, Stegachev exited his apartment block in Saratov Oblast, 300 miles from the Ukrainian frontier. As he walked to his car, a Ukrainian agent, armed with a silent pistol, ambushed him in the dimly lit parking area. Stegachev was hit numerous times. His assailant vanished into the night. The HUR publicly named the operation the same day, stating that Stegachev personally launched dozens of missiles at Ukrainian cities. But the HUR admitted that after the attack, the pilot's condition was unknown. Russian reports claimed he had miraculously survived, but other, more credible indications were that he succumbed to his wounds. At any rate, his flying days are probably over. After the fall of Mariupol, many of its defenders were held at Russia's Olenivka prison, 20 kilometers southwest of the occupied city of Donetsk. Russian Colonel Sergei Yevsyukov was the commandant of the Olenivka POW camp. He was directly implicated in the starvation and maltreatment of hundreds of Ukrainian POWs. But worse, much worse, lay in store for Mariupol's heroes. Shortly after lights out on 29 July, an explosion ripped through a barracks housing 193 Ukrainian POWs. The blast killed 30 prisoners instantly. A fire followed, burning dozens more and killing others by smoke inhalation. Roughly 1 in 3 of these POWs were either killed or grievously wounded in the blast and ensuing fire. The Russians, well, they watched the barracks burn for 7 hours. Medical aid was not provided until 5 a.m. the next morning, exacerbating the injuries of the burned and the wounded. The toll was 53 POWs killed and 130 critically burned and wounded. Many of the wounded died a day later from untreated injuries and burns. Russia, well, it refused to allow investigators to visit the site and claimed, unbelievably, that the POWs were killed by a Ukrainian HIMARS strike. Moscow alleged that Kyiv had staged a deliberate attack on their own POWs to stop them from defecting to the Russian side. UN and ICC investigations concluded it was a deliberate Russian execution. Ukraine would avenge their deaths. 9 December 2024 in central Donetsk City near University Street. Yevsyukov was Olenivka camp's commandant, and he climbed into his white Toyota Land Cruiser for a drive. He would not make it to his destination. Utilizing a network of local partisans in the occupied city, SBU agents gained access to the vehicle during the night. They installed an explosive device under the driver's seat. This IED used a shape charge to focus the blast and limit collateral damage. As Yevseyukov passed a Ukrainian operative, the charge was triggered by a cell phone. Yevseyukov was killed instantly. By the time Russian investigators arrived, the Ukrainian team had exfiltrated into the shadows of the occupied city. SBU sources took credit for the hit, calling it long overdue justice for Olenivka. Since 2022, Russia has conducted over 4,800 documented chemical attacks against Ukrainian troops and civilians. Russian chemical weapons include chloropictrin, a World War I irritant agent, CS, and other toxic gases dropped from drones and delivered by mortar and artillery shells. These attacks have caused severe injuries to more than 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers. Several have been killed by toxins of the organophosphate class. Nerve gas is suspected in their deaths. Lieutenant General Igor Krylyov, Russia's chief of radiation, chemical, and biological defense, personally directed the deployment of these chemical weapons. On 16 December 2024, Ukraine formally charged General Krylyov with conducting prohibited chemical warfare. Just 24 hours after Ukraine announced its charges, SBU operatives infiltrated a residential area in Ryazansky Avenue in Moscow. Agents parked an electric scooter in front of Krylyov's luxury apartment block. The scooter looked like any other rental model that could be found parked on a Moscow corner. Only this one had been specially configured to conceal a Soviet-era OZM-72 anti-personnel mine. Called a bouncing Betty in the West, this mine functions by launching a 500-gram explosive charge 1.5 meters into the air. Detonated, 2,400 steel fragments are blasted into a 3-meter kill zone. When General Krylyov exited the building, the mine was activated by an encrypted signal. The weapon detonated, producing a blast that shattered windows up to the 3rd floor. General Krylyov and his aide were killed instantly. As ambulances and first responders converged, Ukrainian operatives vanished into Moscow's vast anonymity. After being driven back from Kyiv in March 2022, Russian forces fell back to the city of Bucha. Throughout their occupation, systematic killings, torture, rapes, and executions of civilians took place. 458 Ukrainian citizens, including women and children, were murdered. Their bodies were found after the liberation of the town. Most victims had been shot in the back of the head. They had their hands tied or showed signs of torture. Bodies were left in streets, yards, and basements. Many bore the signs of torture and sexual violence. Russian Lieutenant Colonel Veniamin Nazharin was the commander of a motor rifle element in Russia's Oman's Orenburg unit. It was one of several elements that occupied Bucha. He was implicated as an on-scene commander. HUR agents, exploiting intercepted communications and local surveillance, tracked him across the continent. On 25 October 2025, in Russia's Kemerovo Oblast, more than 400 kilometers from Ukraine, Nazharin started his car for his commute to work. The engine roared into life. and then it was lights out. HUR agents had gained access to the vehicle during an overnight stop. They attached a magnetic limpet mine to the undercarriage. The detonation was captured on an operative's video and shows the fireball from a concealed vantage. The blast killed Mazherin instantly. The SBU confirmed the operation, noting Mazherin's role in Oman's atrocities. Bucha had been partly avenged. Throughout 2022 and 2023, Russia's Black Sea Fleet launched repeated caliber strikes on Odessa, Mykolaiv, and other coastal cities. Putin's navy also used its warships to impose an illegal blockade of Ukrainian merchant and grain ships. Admiral Viktor Sokolov, commander of the Black Sea Fleet, orchestrated naval terror campaigns from his Sevastopol headquarters. Patiently, Ukrainian operatives inserted into occupied Crimea penetrated the heart of the admiral's command. HUR Special Operations Forces, in coordination with partisan networks like Atesh, monitored Russian communication. They intercepted calls and gathered patterns of movement and waited patiently. By the end of that summer, HUR learned that Admiral Sokolov scheduled a senior staff conference. Leaders of major commands would be in attendance. Ukraine made plans accordingly. At 1200 local time on 22 September 2023, the Admiral convened the meeting. Nearly the entire fleet command, over 100 officers, were gathered in a secret underground briefing room. Unbeknownst to them all, deep over Ukrainian territory, Su-24 strike fighter had sortied. Spaced seconds apart, they launched 10 Storm Shadow missiles. They were programmed for low-altitude ingress to evade Crimea's S-400 defenses. Each had been configured with special two-stage bunker buster warheads. At 12:15, as Admiral Sokolov delivered his opening remarks, the Storm Shadows hit their target. Sequential detonations collapsed the structure's core and killed at least 9 senior officers, likely including Sokolov. 105 Russian naval officers were wounded. The blasts destroyed irreplaceable operation plans, communications, and command infrastructure. Satellite imagery confirmed the headquarters' devastation. The Admiral's fleet would never fully recover. After the attack, Russia aired a staged photograph showing a glassy-eyed Sokolov propped up in a hospital bed. Russia claimed this proved he had survived. But Admiral Sokolov has never again been seen in public. You may draw your own conclusions. In 2022, Russian forces occupying Izium turned that city into a major Russian logistics hub. They used it as a strong point while systematically shelling nearby villages. General Valery Gerashimov, chief of the General Staff of Putin's armed forces, made a rare frontline visit to personally oversee the stalled Izium axis. HUR received precise intelligence from intercepted Russian communications, revealing Gerashimov's multi-day trip to the front. Russia had established a forward headquarters for the 2nd Combined Arms Army and Airborne Forces at Izium's school number 12. On 1 May 2022, Gerashimov scheduled a high-level briefing at the school. More than 40 senior officers, majors, colonels, and some brigadier generals were gathered. Ukraine was prepared to act. The HUR coordinated Ukrainian artillery units to deliver a barrage of howitzer rounds and Western precision-guided munitions on the site. As Gerashimov was preparing to depart the meeting, they opened fire. The building became a tomb. The strike killed an estimated 200 Russian troops, including Major General Andrei Simonov. Unconfirmed reports indicated that Gerashimov himself had also been wounded. The strike disrupted Russian theater command chains for weeks. The ghosts of Izium have haunted Moscow's generals ever since. During March in 2022, Russian naval infantry and airborne forces besieged the city of Mariupol. Russia bombed a clearly marked maternity hospital on the 9th of March, and the Mariupol theater, sheltering hundreds of civilians, was deliberately hit on the 16th of March. An investigation by Human Rights Watch reports that more than 8,000 Ukrainian civilians perished as the result of Russian attacks and starvation. Other sources have put the civilian death count above 25,000. Vice Admiral Andrei Paley, deputy commander of the Black Sea Fleet, directed the marine assaults and a city blockade that starved and shelled Mariupol into rubble. Born in Kyiv in 1970, Paley had betrayed the nation of his birth. Ukraine would make him pay. On the 20th of March 2022, Admiral Paley made a trip to Mariupol to inspect his forward positions. HUR spotters, embedded with Ukrainian Marines in the Avstal defenses, used drone surveillance and human intelligence from local resistance fighters to track the Admiral's convoy. Arriving at his destination, Paley exited his armored vehicle. A single thump echoed from the ruins. A designated marksman in an elevated position in a high-rise ruin overlooking the site had aimed a suppressed Dragunov SVD sniper rifle, firing a single 7.62 millimeter round. The shot was estimated at 400 meters, and the sniper did not miss. Paley was hit in the center of his chest and was killed instantly. After Paley fell, Ukrainian defenders and the Azov steel plant fought on, unbroken. Russian media later claimed Paley had been aiding civilian evacuations. The assassination was confirmed in a quickly deleted Russian Navy post. The admiral's death sowed confusion and discord in the Black Sea Fleet Command that continued for months. Russian officers asked themselves, if an admiral isn't safe, who is? These operations, executed across 4 years and deep inside Russian-controlled territory or in Russia itself, demonstrate an extraordinary combination of signals intelligence, human sources, partisan networks, and ruthless precision. Whether by pistol, magnetically attached bomb, cruise missiles timed to smash a staff building, or any other means, Ukraine's HUR and SBU have made it clear. If you order or carry out atrocities against Ukrainian civilians, you will be made to pay, no matter what your rank and no matter where you hide.
Алло, здравствуйте. У вас же можно знать, да, человек жив или нет?
Здравствуйте. У вас, случайно, нет информации о моем муже?
Извините за беспокойство, пожалуйста. Я вас беспокою по поводу брата.
These are the voices of Russians, parents, wives, siblings, desperately searching for answers. Calling to find information, anything, on Russian soldiers they've lost contact with who are fighting in Ukraine, who may be wounded, captured, or even killed.
Он выходил с вами на связь. 23-го, когда пересекал границу. Он сказал вам, куда он едет.
This Russian wife, like many others, has turned to an unlikely source for help. The Ukrainians.
Let's take you now to Ukraine and the war. Russian authorities confirming the death of their high-ranked general deployed to Ukraine. It's Major General Vladimir Zavadsky, who was the deputy commander of the 14th Army Corps of the Northern Fleet. This has come from the governor of the Russian Vorozhny region. Pro-Kremlin sources say Zavadsky was killed after being blown up by a mine. This comes as Russia bombarded southern Ukraine overnight, the regions of Kherson and Mykolaiv being hit. Jessica Parker is our correspondent in Kyiv right now. She told me that Major General Zavadsky's death is significant for the Kremlin.
General Zavadsky, as you say, we had heard last week, actually, in unconfirmed reports that he had been killed, but there wasn't a lot of detail and it hadn't been confirmed by official sources in Russia. So this development today, as you say, a regional governor confirming that he had died. It isn't exactly clear, and this governor didn't outline the circumstances of General Zavadsky's death. There have been reports that he actually died some way back from the front line, possibly blown up by a landmine. That would suggest it could have been a Russian-laid landmine. His unit was thought to be around the Kherson region, but there's actually been conflicting reports as to where it may have happened. So, in truth, we don't know the exact circumstances of his death as things stand. In terms of its significance, it would be, we think, around the 7th general to have died since Russia's full-scale invasion. I think around 4 died in the first 4 months of fighting and then 2 earlier this summer. Clearly, the loss of any kind of senior military official in the field is always a blow to that side.